Director of Youth Outreach for the National Mental Health Awareness Campaign. Our organization was actually started in June of 1999 at the first ever White House Conference on Mental Health. And the organization was started to be an education and awareness campaign to remove the stereotypes surrounding mental disorders, and most importantly, I think, go out and educate all young people on the fact that they can talk about whatever it is they're going through. I don't have a Greek affiliation. I wasn't in the military. I was never really an athlete either. My background in this comes solely from mental health. And my mental health background is in three ways. One, it's personal experience. I have a lot of different mental disorders in my family: alcoholism, and also bipolar disorder, depression. And I have personal experience in my own life. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder with anger control problems and psychotic features when I was 16 years old. I was hospitalized for wanting to take my own life during my senior year of high school, and I had to leave college 10 months later, 2 months into my freshman year of college, due to a relapse with bipolar disorder. The second part of my education is from traveling and speaking around the country. I've spoken to over 400,000 young people in the past 5 years. I speak to middle schools, high schools, and colleges. And I've seen these problems in every middle school, every high school, every college in the country that I've spoken to. And then my third part of education comes from working with the top psychologists and psychiatrists in the country, if not the world, on these issues. So I have a strong background in mental health. And what I want to talk to you about today, furthering Travis and TJ's stories, Travis' personal stories, TJ's about his son, is to give you the statistics of how wide mental health issues really are. I'm going to talk to you about the common feelings from these mental disorders. I'm going to talk to you about brain development, because I think it's important. A lot of times people don't view the brain as part of the body. You know, if I was standing up here with my shin bone sticking through my pants, bleeding, people wouldn't question me seeking help. But if I was standing up here crying, a good majority of the audience would be like, well, suck it up. Deal with it. Not knowing that I may have gone through something like Travis or something like Isaiah, TJ's son. So I think we really do need to recognize the brain as a part of the body. And after I talk about that, I'll give you 2 case examples, and I'll turn it back over to TJ for the closing. So let's start with statistics. I think when we talk about mental health, you have to understand mental health is on a wide continuum. There are mental health issues. Mental health issues are things that have identifiable cause: death, divorce, sexual abuse, physical abuse, rejection, any type of major traumatic event that can bring about a mental health issue, something to deal with. And then there are mental disorders. And mental disorders are the diagnosable mental disorders that you often hear about. The Surgeon General's report on suicide and mental health in 1999 showed that 1 out of every 5 young people suffers from some diagnosable form of mental disorder each year. A study recently released in June by Harvard and the National Institute of Mental Health showed that it's now 1 out of 4 people suffer from some diagnosable form of mental disorder each year. So if you think about that, that's 20 to 25% of every college campus. 20 to 25% of every chapter, 20 to 25% of the military, all these things. That's a big number. Recently, 44% of college students reported feeling symptoms of depression or having depression. 44% is also a big number. The most common mental disorders for young people is number 1, anxiety disorders, number 2, depression, number 3 is eating disorders. Eating disorders affect 5 to 10 million young females a year and are now greatly affecting males as well. It's followed by ADD, ADHD, and then on the low level bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and the other disorders. Women are much more likely to experience mental disorders. We don't know if that's because they report it more frequently or if it's because they actually do. Males are much more likely to be violent, much more likely to complete suicide attempts, and much more likely to abuse substances. Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death in our high schools in America, and the 2nd leading cause of death on college campuses. Those are big numbers, and those are the mental disorders. As far as mental health issues go, you have to include alcohol, drugs, things like that. 66%, or almost 7 out of 10 college students who drink or use drugs have a co-occurring mental health issue. Recently, 76% of college students reported feeling overwhelmed. So if you take the 25% of people who may be suffering from a mental disorder and you magnify it to the amount of young people who may be dealing with a mental health issue, you're looking at close to 100% of people dealing with some type of mental health issue, dealing with something that could be triggered through hazing. Those statistics may seem daunting to you. The statistic that bothers me the most is that 2/3 of people with mental disorders don't seek help. They don't talk about it. They won't tell a friend, a family member, anyone else about what they're going through. That's a big number as well. And part of the reason people don't talk about it is because of the common feelings that come out of mental health issues. The number one most common feeling that I see from mental health issues and mental disorders is self-hatred. I'm surprised by the amount of young people I meet that hate themselves. If you hate yourself, you can take treatment, medication, diagnosis, you can throw it out the window, because if you hate yourself, you're willing to binge drink. You're willing to drink and drive. You're willing to destroy yourself, because you don't care about what happens to you. Self-hatred tied in with hazing can go hand in hand. You haze someone who hates themselves, they'll be willing to do whatever you want them to do, because they don't care about changing their lives. They don't care enough to even realize that that's dangerous. The other common side effect that I see a lot of times is a need for community, is this isolation, this loneliness, this fear. They need people around them. So these two types of problems set up an example where someone may be prone to joining a fraternity or a sorority or the military, or even if you're a great athlete looking for a connection. So people with mental health disorders, mental health issues that lack a connection to themselves, that lack an attachment, may be joining Greek life for that attachment, for that sense of community, for that need of people being around, and have all these triggers inside of them. Now I want to give you the first case example. First case example would be somebody with a mental health issue. Someone like Travis who witnessed a lot of difficult events. Someone like Isaiah, TJ's son, who was raised in a home with physical abuse, sexual abuse. What I want to start out with, though, is the brain development. We now know that the words you use to describe children are the words children use to define themselves. Now think about that. So if you tell a child, maybe Isaiah was told he was stupid, lazy, a mistake, he was beaten, he was hit, that's his self-definition. That's the first definition he has of himself. So let's say he grows up, he adjusts, everything's going well, he goes to college, he goes through a hazing experience, and someone does yell at him, scream at him. That definition is going to be brought back out. It's going to be made real for him again. The other side of brain development that I want to talk about is we now know as well that the brain cells and neurons start to connect between the ages of 12 and 14. Those crazy teenagers. And we always known that for years. Teenagers are weird. We didn't know why. Now we know why. They can start experiencing emotion for the first time between 12 and 14. Our brains don't fully mature until the ages of 22 to 24. The coping mechanisms, the experiences that happen between 12 and 24 will last the rest of your life. Now, I heard someone say earlier something about social rejection. And I always hear people say, oh, rejection's rejection, just suck it up, deal with it. UCLA did a study. The study showed that the same areas of our brain are activated when someone gets their arm ripped off as when someone faces social rejection. Think about that. The same areas of your brain are activated through immense physical pain as they are through immense emotional pain. The problem is we can identify physical pain. You know when someone doesn't have an arm. Emotional pain, social rejection, that could be anything. Based on an individual experience level, that could be anything. So that hidden harm could be from these experiences, sexual abuse, physical abuse, even divorce. All these mental health issues could be the hidden harm. And when they go through a hazing process, something like that, it's not something to just suck up. It's not something to deal with. It's a neurological problem. It's in your brain. It may be your first self-definition of yourself, of what you experienced, and it may be something that happened in your life. The coping mechanisms young people develop in between age 12 and 24 are the coping mechanisms they're most comfortable using the rest of their lives. So they can trigger other problems, eating disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, even suicidal thoughts, behavior, anger, fighting. That's the mental health example, mental health issue example. Let me give you the mental disorder example. The worst possible environment for someone with a mental disorder, or someone with a predisposition to having a mental disorder, meaning it's in their family, they just have never had an episode, is a lack of sleep, constant or extreme change, substance abuse, a major loss or traumatic event. That sounds like hazing, doesn't it? That is the worst possible environment for someone with a mental disorder. In that environment, it could either trigger a relapse of a mental disorder, whatever it was before they came to campus, or trigger their first episode of a major mental disorder. And again, as I said earlier, the easiest mental disorders to trigger are also the most common. Your anxiety disorders, depression, eating disorders, not so much ADD or ADHD, bipolar disorder, things like that. And again, because of our brains developing, between the ages of 12 and 24 are when most people are going to have their first experiences with mental disorders. So those are the case examples. That's the reality. That's the reality of hidden harm. These are the things you're looking at. These are the numbers. This is what's happening in our society. And in closing,